Good morning, everyone. I'm Melanie Cohen. Thank you very much for attending, those attending in person, those attending online. As usual, let me just give you the first sort of administrative notes for those HUD employees who want to get credit for this, training credit. Please send me an email and we'll make sure that we put you on the list. For HUD employees here, please sign the sign-in sheet and we'll make sure that you get training credit. So let me just start by saying we keep changing the format a little bit. This format happens to involve me being the presenter. I'm going to be talking about a new area of thinking, which is a little bit different than we normally do. And it's going to be a little bit more of a presentation, but hopefully it's a presentation in a different way that you haven't seen that's going to spur some ideas and some new thinking for you. So, design thinking. I don't know if people are too familiar with that idea or not. I don't know if a lot of people have even heard about it. So let's do this. Let's go to the first slide, the next slide, which talks about the right brain and the left brain. So I'm not sure, again, if people are too familiar with this idea, but let me talk to you a minute about what the right brain is and the left brain. So if you take a look at the slide, what you see is the left brain. That's all about analytical thinking, rational thinking, sort of straight line functions. And when you take a look at it, you kind of get that visualization of people in their cubicles, right? Isn't that kind of the idea that you see? And then when you think about right brain, the design thinking is known as the era of the right brain. And so what that involves is it's more artistic, it's more involved with integrating different functions, and it's more involved with ideas. And when you take a look at that slide, what you see is sort of this happy place where people aren't really tied up to boundaries, right? There are no boundaries there because it's the whole idea of thinking new, thinking different, integrating ideas, and looking beyond the boundaries of your own area. So let's go to the next slide because what I'm going to give you very briefly is just sort of the foundations of where design thinking came from. And let me just mention, because I see a couple people taking notes, no need to take notes. I'll be sending out slides following the presentation. So it's more important, really, that you get the gist of and an understanding for what's being said because you'll get all the notes later. So systems thinking. If anyone's familiar with systems thinking, that's the idea that beliefs are about holism. So it's the pieces of the puzzle that create the whole, okay? That's really the main thought behind systems thinking. But design thinking is something a little bit different altogether, but its foundations came from systems thinking, so I wanted you to get the sense of where that idea came from. So let's go to the next slide, because I want to start talking about the whole idea of talking about design thinking, thinking in a different way, and thinking generally, because that's often hard. And there's a couple slides that I have a little later in the presentation, which will really lay out for you the differences between the way we think through problems and the way we talk about problems. But let's talk about problems really briefly now, because what I want to give you definitions for and ideas about are what wicked problems are. And if people are really address wicked problems. Most problems we talk about generally are not wicked problems, they're just generally everyday organizational problems. But wicked problems have no definitive formulation, right? They're very ill-structured. So the idea is it's not really you have a beginning and you have an end. What you have is this kind of complex thing that's happening, okay? And when you think about problems yourself and you think about the problems that you face and you think about the problems in your organization, there probably is a little bit of a beginning and an end to them. So they're not necessarily wicked problems. I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of these things. Wicked problems are essentially unique. Okay, so they're not the everyday problem that you face in your office. They're not the everyday organizational problem. Because when you think about the problems that you encounter every day at your office, are they really kind of the similar problem over and over again, but it hasn't really been solved correctly? So it sort of mutates in a different direction, but it's really not so significantly, fundamentally different than what you just tried to solve before. A lot of times that's what the problems are. And number 9 on this list, many stakeholder perspectives about the problem. So, you know, you have a lot of different thoughts and ideas and inputs into what that problem is all about, okay? So kind of think through the problems you have, think through what wicked problems actually are, and then we're going to go through some problem-solving techniques, and then I'm going to show you, and of course, feel free to ask questions anytime, because that sort of adds to the whole interest of this. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is the traditional problem-solving method, okay, the waterfall method. Now, what happens here is, and this doesn't work for a wicked problem, so what happens here is we spend a lot of time, but a finite time, gathering the data of what the problem is, right? We gather so much data. Then we spend another finite amount of time analyzing that data, right? And then we begin to formulate a solution. But each of these are discrete activities. That's the waterfall piece of it. They're each discrete activities. And then what we do is we implement some solution. Now, in the interim, what I'm just showing you right now is the traditional problem-solving method. In the interim, what sometimes happens is, and let me just mention too, this is a very rational model. This is what normally gets done. But in the interim, sometimes the problem changes, right? And sometimes you get new data. Sometimes, you know, your analysis begins to take on different shape. But you haven't taken any of that into effect because you're busy on the next step. So what I would suggest to you, although this is a very rational model and this is what we do every day and this is what's done almost all the time, it's doomed to fail, okay? This is doomed to fail. So let's go to the next one. So what's design thinking anyway? So I talked to you just very briefly about what systems thinking is. So design thinking, I have a number of definitions and some pictures, and we'll go through that. But here's the idea behind it. It's the idea of integrating analytical thinking with abductive thinking, okay? And I'll explain what that is. But it's the idea of when you think about issues, you can either do one of two things. You can either use statistics and trends and quantitative analysis and surveys and historical data, which is going to produce some sort of reliable result, right? It always produces a reliable result because you're using actual analytics. Or, which what design thinking is, you can begin to get a better understanding and framing of what the real problem is by understanding the content and the context of the problem, which is what most people don't do. Most people have a problem and they look for a quick solution. You know, when you think about it, is that what often happens? You have a problem, you want to solve it, and you want to move on to whatever the next thing is, but you don't take the time to really think about and understand the complexity of what that problem is all about. And that's the idea behind design thinking. It's the idea of understanding the problem, I use prototyping, but I use prototyping in a different way. I don't mean prototyping like prototyping systems or prototyping, you know, a product. I mean prototyping solutions so that you can take that potential pilot solution, see if that solves the problem. Normally it won't solve the problem, so you need to continue to adjust that because the problem continues to mutate and then come up with something else. So it's really an iterative type of approach, which is something very different than the traditional problem solving. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And what that is essentially, I just want to give you some definitions because really because I'm an academic and I love definitions. So, but that's not really the part of it. I want you to understand, although I'm explaining it, I want you to understand what some of the definitions are. So it's defined as the ability to combine empathy for the context of the problem. That's really key. Empathy for the context of the problem, understanding what the problem really is, the ins and outs of the problem, before you run and try to get a solution based on what you think the problem is, okay? And it's about creating and recreating and regenerating insights about that, and then analyzing the solutions, and then revising those solutions. So it's a constant revision of the solutions because you're continually re-examining the problem, okay? Can we go to the next slide? This is another definition. This is a definition that's used more appropriately, really, in the private sector because it looks at market opportunities. But it's the idea, and this is what they do. This is what they have to do in the private sector because they're constantly looking at market share, increasing market share, and they're looking at profitability. But it doesn't mean that those sorts of ideas cannot be instituted in the public sector, because that's the idea of recreating and recreating value. And the idea is you have to continually recreate value for something to be effective. Can we go to the next slide? So this one also, I've got a lot of slides called What is Design Thinking? So this one also is the idea that you have some project, right? Somebody has an idea, like somebody has an idea in your office. Something happens, which is the squiggly stuff in the center. Who knows what that stuff is, but that's really the thinking that goes on, right? Iterative sort of thinking. And then, of course, in the private sector, money follows. In the public sector, what's going to follow is value, right? Value for the citizen. So that's really the idea to keep in mind. So let's go to the next one. This actually goes through sort of the different phases of it. I'm not going to explain it all to you because I want to spend more time on the next slide. But the idea is, and what I've just talked about, is that it's iterative. It's not problem, solution, you're done. Okay? It's recreating and understanding what the problem is, what the solution is you came up with, and looking at that solution in the context of the problem, in the context of the environment, and revising that solution. Okay, so it's a constant state of thinking through the issues. Now, I'm going to spend more time on the next one, so let's go to the next slide, because this is really one of the key slides here. So think to yourself, when you have a problem in your organization, what words do you even use? How do you think about problems? Do you talk about, we have a problem, we need to solve it? We have a problem, we need to solve it. Or do you talk about, we have a problem, we really need to understand it, and we really need to frame it in the context of what is actually going on, and we need to look at the entire environment? How many people do that? You know, you can just nod. Virtually, I hope you're nodding virtually. So, but think about it. You know, think about how that works. Think about the language that you use. Do you start with already sort of a coherent plan, or do you work with a blank piece of paper? A lot of people don't work with a blank piece of paper, you know, because a blank piece of paper is hard to work with. Isn't it easier to have sort of a draft or a straw man or something, and then comment on that, right? Isn't that what most people do? They comment on something that already exists. They don't start with the blank piece of paper, because that takes a lot of that's a lot of hard work to start with a blank sheet. Now, do you function with the existing paradigm, which means, are you sort of existing in the environment that you're in, and you're maybe creating some sort of solution that fits within that environment? Or are you trying to come up with something completely different and new? Are you willing to take that risk and come up with something completely different, hasn't been seen before, and you're willing to say, okay, I'm going to think about this thing in a completely different way, and we're going to achieve something new that we've never achieved before, okay? Think through your own problems in your own organizations and think about that. Paradigm accepting, okay? So when you have a problem in your organization, do you sometimes say, well, you know, this is kind of the way it is, and I'm going to have to work within this environment, and I'll come up with a solution within this environment. It may not be long-lasting, it may not be long-term, it may be short-term, but it'll fit the issue now, and then I can move on to the next thing. Or are you sort of looking at it in terms of, you know what, this environment is not a good environment. We need to change this fundamentally, and we need to shift that paradigm to something completely different. You know, because I know in the future, if we can do that, this will be a better place to be, okay? So kind of think through that. The idea of patterns and templates, that's the same kind of thing as, do you work with something that exists already and sort of comment on that, or do you go to something completely new and different? So, you know, I mean, I'm not asking anybody to raise their hand and say, oh, yeah, we stick with what's here, and then we just kind of make incremental changes. Or, you know what, in our place, what we've done is we've sort of forgotten everything that's here. We started from a blank sheet, and we move forward from there. You know, it's not about what you do right now so much, but it's about how you think about doing things in the future. And it's about how you think about solving problems in the future. Okay. Okay, I was just thinking there's no microphone out here, so the people on the internet actually can't hear what you say. But go ahead and say it. I'll repeat the question.
I'm thinking in terms of oftentimes when there's a problem, and we look and see, okay, has this problem happened before? Who's had a similar problem? And so let's just implement the same solution or something similar, and that will fix it. And thinking that this would be efficient. So with the design thinking approach, you would not do that. Would you lose efficiency?
You know, so the question is, when you have the same problem repeatedly, oftentimes you would look back at prior solutions and use those prior solutions to solve the problem. Essentially, what's happened is you haven't solved the problem, right? Because you've used repeatedly the same solutions over and over again, and that problem hasn't been solved. It may have been solved initially in the short term. Now, if you're talking about efficiency in the short term, you know, you may solve the problem immediately, but if you're looking at organizational efficiency along the, if you're looking at organizational effectiveness for the long term, you're actually not doing any favors to your organization by using the same solutions over and over again, because essentially what's happened is that same solution is not as effective because it hasn't really been thoroughly thought through. And that was a great question. And so, again, open it up to whatever questions you may have. The last thing on this chart is the language you use is really key. How often do you use the words, you know, we need to have a detailed plan of action. We need to have a blueprint. Blueprint's used a lot. We need to have a blueprint. Do you ever say, we need some broad approach to solve this problem? We need to figure out how this problem is designed so that we understand the complexity of this problem so that that doesn't happen again. That doesn't happen as often as saying, you know, we need a plan. We need a detailed plan, which is probably one of the worst things you can actually have because that sort of bounds you into your box, so to speak. Okay, so the next slide, I like pictures a little bit. I like words even more, but I like pictures a little bit. So what I wanted you to get the sense of in this slide is that what design thinking is not just having a problem and a solution, right? And it's not just understanding the problem, very single-minded, focused kind of thing, and then developing a solution. It's this iterative kind of process where you understand the problem, you frame the problem, you get the context, you have empathy for the problem, you develop a solution, you prototype that, you pilot it, and in the interim, the problem may shift, so your solution keeps changing. So you're constantly looking at what that problem and solution is. It's a constant process. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So again, as if you should really know what design thinking is now a little bit, right? Or not, maybe not. So, but here are some very basic ideas for it, okay? It's collaborative. And the idea is, it's this whole idea of having different complementary experiences. So what you would have in an organization is you don't want people with all the same skills working together on something, right? That's not very effective. It's the idea of having people with the complementary skills working together who can create something new. If everyone's of the same brain or the same thought, you're going to get kind of what you got, which was your own idea in the beginning, right? Which is not very effective. Abductive thinking, which is something that I mentioned at the very beginning, it's the idea of inventing new options to find new and better solutions to new problems. Okay? It's really thinking through that problem. Experimental, which is what we talked about, which is the idea of you need to experiment with the solution, right? Because maybe the solution you came up with isn't really the solution to the problem because, one, the problem either keeps arising, or two, the problem mutates and changes in some way that it makes it different, so you need to keep varying the solution. It's personal, so what that means is you have to understand really the context of the problem. You can't just see a problem on the surface. I mean, you can, certainly. You can just see a problem on its surface, but that's when you have ineffective solutions. That's when it doesn't work. And I think that everybody here would have an example of where they were faced with a problem, they came up with a solution, and it either backfired, didn't work, it was very short term, and that problem just resurfaced again because essentially what you did was you didn't think it through enough, and it was really like putting a Band-Aid on some festering sore that needed something really more systematic to get rid of. It's integrative, which is the idea of understanding all the links that are associated with each problem. And it's framing. Interpretive is about framing the problem in a certain way. So let's go to the next one, which is what we talked about earlier was the waterfall, right? Which was that step-by-step process where people spend a lot of time in one of those areas. Now, what this is, it's the waterfall, but what's been added to it is the design thinking piece of it, which is this whole idea of reevaluating each step of that process and coming up with new ways of thinking about how am I even gathering the data? What am I even doing with that? You know, am I looking at the data and then I'm forgetting about it, or am I looking at the data, I look at what some new data is, I come up with some new ideas. It's that whole idea of continually an iterative process on how you think through problems. Okay, are there any questions so far before I get into some other stuff?
I'm interested in what you think the effect of contracting without having firm fixed costs in this process has on this, because it seems to me that there can be a plan, but then you can end up with a contractor where their motive is not a solution that comes to an end quickly, but instead one that keeps going on, which could be, you know, full of problem. And I know there are other agencies where if you put in a bid, it's got to be a firm fixed price for technology, unless the agency's needs change.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that and its relationship to using implementing this here?
Okay, so to restate the problem, the question was, how would you use design thinking in the firm fixed price contracting methodology?
Well, or just getting away from the non-firm fixed price, which is where, you know, I've seen systems go out of control in terms of how much support they need and how long, how much it goes on and doesn't necessarily meet needs.
Okay, so
Where you have a conflict of interest.
Yeah, you basically do have a conflict
Right.
of interest when
Oh.
it's not firm fixed.
A party wants to perpetuate.
right, okay, so I'm trying to rephrase the question so that everybody could understand it, particularly me, in terms of trying to answer it. So it's about when you have a firm fixed contract, and it's not about when you have, okay. Because what?
Seems to be not having firm fixed contracts, and I'm wondering, would you agree that having firm fixed contracts would definitely be much more compatible with design thinking?
No, well, actually, I can't even answer a question like that because that's not what this is all about. Because that's a question that would have to be done administratively throughout an organization to determine that. I'm talking about when you have this is a technique that you would use when you have organizational problems in your office, which are usually, and I'll get into it in a minute, which are usually interpersonal. Okay, which are very much interpersonal usually in organizations. When you're talking about, and let me talk a minute about design thinking again, and if we could go to the next slide. Because what I want you to get is the idea of needing to think through problems in a different way. Okay, it's not about the techniques you use when some administrative sort of thing is in place necessarily. It's the idea of when you're faced with a problem, how do you think through that solution? Okay, so these are just some of the highlights, and I've talked about a lot of these things, but I'm going to talk about some more as we get a little further in. It's really not about it's not as much about the problem, because you need to understand the problem in its whole totality. It's more about the solution. All right? It's the human capacity to understand the problem. It's about paradigm shifting versus sticking within the paradigm that you have. It's the right brain that we talked about. And it's about T-shaped thinking. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what T-shaped thinking is. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that or not, but it's the idea of combining analytical thinking, which is the vertical leg of the T, and horizontal thinking, which is that intuitive, empathetic sort of thinking. Okay, so can we go to the next one? Okay, so the T. I want you to make sure that you see the T really clearly here. So the T-shaped thinking, something a little bit different. So critical thinking is concerned with value statements, judgments, yes and no, very analytical. Now, lateral thinking, which is the top part of that T, is about idea generation. Okay, so you need to combine both of those things. You need to combine the analytical and you need to combine the creating new ideas. So let me give you examples because this will make it a little bit easier. So someone who is a purely vertical thinker, which is the bottom part of the T, that's kind of a nitpicker. That's sort of like somebody who's really just into analysis and facts. It's either this or it's not, okay? That's sort of a nitpicky person. That's a pure analytical thinker. If you're a pure lateral thinker, which is the top part of the T, that's somebody who's into daydreaming. That's somebody who's into idea after idea after idea when nothing's ever implemented, okay? Now, I think we've all seen people like that. We all know people like that. Maybe some of us are people like that, one or the other. Okay? The idea is you need to integrate both of those things to be successful. Okay? So if that's a new idea for you, then great, the T-shaped thinker. So think about that. Think. Think is the key here, thinking. Okay? So let's go to the next slide, which is the box. Now you notice here, sometimes you feel caught in that, like you're in the box. They say get out of the box, but you can't get out of the box, really, can you? Because you're in the box. It's hard to get out of the box. But the key thing here is, like, even if the box were to flip over, okay, you still can't get out of the box. That lost a little effect somehow, but there was a scream associated with that. But even if the box were to flip over, you can't get out of the box because it's a glass lid also, right? So the idea is you sort of have to create challenges for yourself. And that's the idea of design thinking. You create challenges for yourself because you're really not trapped in that box. You really can get out of that box. It's glass, right? You can see what's going on around you. You really can escape from it. But you have to think through how you're going to do that by understanding the complexity of each problem. Can we go to the next one? Now, I just talked about the box. I don't know if people are familiar with this 9-point diagram. Have people seen this? So if I say to you, this is a 9-point diagram. We've talked a little bit now about thinking differently, T-shaped thinking, design thinking. If I say to you, you take this 9-point diagram, and in 3 lines, you need to connect all the dots, and you can't lift your pen off the paper. You're going to kind of look at that and say, sure, I can do that. And what you're going to do is you're going to start connecting the dots, and there's always going to be sort of a dot that's left out, right? Isn't there kind of a dot left out usually? Sometimes there's 2 dots left out. Depends on what way you're moving the pen. And I say, you know what? I'll give you 4 lines. Take 4 lines and try to connect it. And you're kind of looking at it, and you try, and you do a couple of things. So, okay, I see a lot of people thinking about it. So let's go to the next slide. So what the next slide is moving outside that box. I never said you were bound by the confines of the dots. I just showed you 9 dots, right? You sort of bound yourself if you weren't able to figure out how to connect the dots, right? Because once you go out of the lines, out of the boundaries of the dots, you're actually able to connect the dots, right? So that's just really sort of the idea of, again, thinking outside the box, okay? Very simple exercise, But you know, even after we just talked about thinking in a different way, I think a lot of people were still bound by the confines that were presented in those 9 dots, right? Were people still sort of thinking about that? Okay. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so can everyone see this clearly? Okay. So this is the whole idea of really thinking creatively, being unorthodox and not tied to conventional constraints. Now, do you or anybody you know, or are you, and you don't have to raise your hands, that sort of zebra in the center? See that zebra in the center? Are you willing to be that zebra in the center? A lot of people aren't willing to be that zebra in the center. Okay? But that's the idea, too, of thinking outside of your boundaries. Looking in the opposite direction. Everybody's looking in one direction, and you're the one looking in the opposite direction because you know what? There's a whole bigger world out there than just what's facing you right in front of you. Right? Okay, let's go to the next one. And this, again, is the idea of being more beyond out of the box. Right? Okay? Do you know anybody like that? Or are you anybody like that? Or have you sort of disregarded people like that? That's what happens a lot of times too. You know, because a lot of times these out-of-the-box design thinking people are not the most conventional. And they kind of can sometimes come on the other side of bureaucracy. And what happens is they end up being that one that doesn't fit in. Right? Okay? So just sort of understand what that is. And then let's go to the next one, because I talked a lot about the box. It's, you know what, it's more than just the box. You need to think about, when you think through problems, you need to think about what box am I actually dealing with, because there's a lot of boxes, right? And that's what this is depicting. There are a lot of boxes that are the issue. It's not, you know, I'm trapped in one thing, this is my one problem, this is my one solution. There's a whole world of stuff out there that you need to consider when you're problem solving, okay? Let's go to the next slide. And what this is organizationally, because again, this is all about the organization, you need to kind of look at cultural norms that exist in organizations, where you are and where you need to go. So right now, generally, in a lot of organizations, you have the prevailing side, which is knowledge is power, right? If I know something and you don't, you know, I'm the more powerful one, right? And I don't really want to share that because you might know something too, right? That's kind of the prevailing idea. You know, I need to be perfect. I need to be the one who's the expert on it. I'm sort of on my own on this. It's all about me. It's all about me and what I know because that gives me some legitimacy. That's kind of a prevailing idea. But in terms of moving forward in 21st century organizations, it's really more about being collaborative. It's really more about sharing power. I mean, the idea really is, you know, if you have people with ideas that come together, you each may have 2 ideas, you come together and you could leave with 6 new ideas. That's the whole idea. It's not that, you know, you're so wonderful because you have the idea. Your idea may not be so great. You need to actually discuss it and you can come up with new ideas. That, again, is the idea of lateral thinking. And it's more about we than it is about I and me. And that's really the future of organizations. Okay, so this is one of my favorite slides. It's almost self-explanatory, but I'll explain it anyway. Maybe it's not self-explanatory. So, it is to me, but in the typical organization, you have an individual, right? That would be your curly-headed girl, who I don't know if that reminds you of anybody, but a curly-headed girl. You have the organization, which is depicted here as Dante's Inferno, okay, which is a swirling mess of chaos, right? Then you have continual demands that come into the organization, which is the person with the spear, right? Continual demands and new requests and new things come into the organization. And then on top of all that, you have all of this intergroup conflict, which are the people fighting, right? Does that kind of depict an organization generally? Could be any organization anywhere. Could be anything. Could be a family. I mean, it could be anything, right? It's a unit. And so that's sort of your typical organization. But what you want to really get to That's the sample, but what you want to get to is the ultimate organization, which is on the next slide. And so what you have here is happy people, right? You have a multi-generational, that's what the different things are supposed to be, whether they're small or large, you know, millennials, baby boomers, all kinds of diversity in organizations. And what you really want to get to is what you have at the very bottom, which is the very happy organization. Right?
Touch this.
That's what you're ultimately trying to get to.
Can't touch this.
Okay. Thank you.
Can't touch.
Okay. You get the gist, right? You get the gist. You're trying to get to some sort of sense of unity, right? That's your ultimate organizational objective. So this slide, and I hope you're thinking to yourself as you're looking at these slides, like, I'm not sure I've seen presentations like this before, where they're a little different, right? That's the whole idea of design thinking, right? They're colorful. They're just a lot of pictures with some words associated with them so you can understand. You're going to understand more if I had an empty frame here than if I had 50 words on the screen. So you're going to get that a lot more. But here's the idea of the frame. We talked about framing, right? In the very beginning, we talked about how you frame the problem. The frame is the key. And the idea is this white space is sort of a metaphor, and it's a canvas of how you solve that problem, okay? So what you have to do really well, just like in a nice gold gilded frame, is frame that problem correctly so that you can use the white space in the center to actually come up with the solution for your masterpiece, okay? So let's go to the next one. So now, when you're faced with a problem, this does not have to be you. Okay. Okay? That doesn't have to be you. You don't have to worry about that. So, I have a very simple exercise to show you. It's a video. And let me just set it up for you so you can understand. If we were sort of set up in a different way, we'd be able to discuss it a little bit better in small groups, but we're not set up for that right now. Before I show the video, though, let me just ask if there are any questions here, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, it's a question and maybe a comment. So design thinking, because you constantly re-examine the problem, does it indicate that you are never quite sure that you have the solution to a problem, so that you have solved the problem, so you keep going back and looking over it again, constantly evaluating it? Would that be a correct way to describe design thinking?
Well, it depends. Oh, so the question is, because you are continually re-examining the problem and the solution, does that mean you don't really correctly understand the problem? You know, in a lot of ways, most problems, and as we talked about in the beginning, particularly wicked problems, don't have a real solution. And that's best what this is used for. But in most instances, you really don't understand the problem because you're not giving you're not giving yourself and others the time to understand the problem. So oftentimes, the solution you come up with does not work because you haven't thoroughly thought out the entire context of the problem. It doesn't mean that that's a bad thing because you're continually re-examining. It actually means it's a good thing because you're not trying to put a simple Band-Aid on a problem that you know has reared its head in the past, and you know I'm coming up with a short-term solution because it's going to rear its head in the future. I just don't have time right now to think about it. Because that's what a lot of people do. I don't have the time right now to really think through a good solution, so I'm just going to try to get a short-term solution for it. And that'll work for however long it works. It comes back again. I mean, how many of you have the same problem that kind of organizationally have the same problem that comes back over and over and over again? And it's because it hasn't been solved really the first time. Okay, any more?
There was an earlier slide that had problem solution and then time, and it seemed to suggest that the waterfall approach and the design thinking approach end up kind of at the solution at the same point in time, whereas it would seem that the design thinking approach would take longer because you're constantly
Right.
iterative process and reevaluation.
Right. The only reason it was like that was because that was the way I had sort of set it up. It doesn't necessarily need to be at the same 100 days or anything like that, because it's constant iterative. What I was trying to get to in that slide was that at each phase of the waterfall, it's an iterative phase. It does take longer with design thinking to solve problems. I mean, the question you ask yourself, of course, is, am I willing to invest the time it's going to take to really think through that problem and try to get a good solution to it? Knowing that a lot of these problems don't have a very easy yes, no, this is the one solution kind of thing. So the question I would have for you, and if we had an opportunity to kind of talk in small groups and talk among yourselves, but whoever would have a response to these questions, or any one of these questions, did this problem and solution sort of fit the idea of design thinking, do you think? And so people are shaking their heads. Is there anyone who would like to say how they think it did? Because there's people also on the internet who are probably thinking through these things too, now that they've seen the scenario. You know, does this actually fit into the method of design thinking? Did they use some of the techniques that we just talked about for design thinking? You know, and if anybody saw one of those techniques, if they wanted to, you know, offer that, or not.
They were forced to think outside the box because they were talking about what procedures that they had before. None of the procedures they had before were able to work. So they were forced to think of new procedures, which is going outside the box to fit this problem.
Right. So someone here, for the people on the internet, someone here said they were forced to go outside of their normal procedures to think about how to solve the problem. Did anybody notice in that one clip where they were asked, you know, is this going to work? And that person immediately said, well, it wasn't designed to do that, right? That's not very much design thinking, is it? That's sort of like the usual, this is not what we had planned for. And we're going to sort of stick with our plan, and I can't tell you it's going to work because that's not what the detailed plan said it was going to do, right? Which goes back to that other chart that we talked about.
I noticed at the beginning we got rid of the overhead projector, which to me kind of spoke to, you know, we're not going to take the same old analytical approach. You know, we looked at the screen, we're going to sketch the site, you know, sketch the problem out, you know, using a lot of visualization and brainstorming lots of different ideas, people building upon the ideas of others, and you know, it isn't like we just went from the first thing and said, that's it, let's go do it, and we're done.
Okay, and so for the people who are watching on the internet, what someone here said was when they push the projector out of the way, forgot what that thing was called when I first saw it. When they pushed that out of the way, they said, you know what, we're not going to just go to what we already have here that's already designed out. We're going to draw this problem out as anew, and we're going to think fresh.
Right, the bulb blew out.
The bulb blew out. Okay, which is well, which is again though, the bulb blew out, so they didn't even have the opportunity to go to their own thinking, right? They wouldn't have even had that opportunity. Now, I unfortunately have to end just a few minutes early because there's another session coming in immediately at 11 o'clock. So what I'm going to say is, I appreciate everybody coming. I'm going to be sending the slides out. I hope that you got something out of this session. And join us next month. We're doing something completely different next month. Next month's event is going to be on October 10th. We're not going with the third Thursday. October 10th, HUD and the Department of Energy are co-sponsoring a motivational speaker. It's going to be October 10th from 1 to 3 here in the auditorium. Her name is Ariane de Bonvoisin. She wrote a book called The First 30 Days, which is going to tell you how to fundamentally make changes in your life in a 30-day period. So I hope that all of you can attend that, and I hope that we get a wonderful internet audience for that. So thank you all very much for attending, and have a great day.